It was the late 1960s. Jack Boland was a 19-year-old kid who was troubled. Troubled. Poor. Dysfunctional family. All his friends went off to college. Jack Boland did not. All his friends had money they were spending. They were going out at night. They were going to be entertained. Jack Boland was not. Jack had a job at 19. No education. And he had a dream. He had a great dream. I want to teach. I want to motivate. I want to inspire the world. How the hell am I going to do that without going to college, without getting an education? So he took a job as a machinist. And strangely enough, he was very good. He's a good machinist. He liked it. He started to advance forward. Maybe he had a minor, insignificant future in his life. And one day, very late, night shift, he picked up an iron bar and he accidentally dropped it on his right knee. Well, he did what most of us would do. He kind of shook it off and he limped away. And his foreman said, "Listen, Jack, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Go to the hospital, get an x-ray. Our insurance companies will require it. Our lawyers will require it. Just please get an x-ray, make sure you're okay." Jack said, "I'm fine. Don't put me through this nonsense." He said, "Jack, as your boss, I'll order you. Get a damn x-ray." And he did. He went to the hospital, he got an x-ray. 2 hours later, they said, "Congratulations, no broken kneecap." Great. Jack went back to work, everything was fine. 4 days later, at that hospital, an intern who was about to complete his internship, coming at the end of a long day, nobody needed medical help. There were no emergencies. That particular day, for some bizarre and odd reason, no one needed a doctor. Well, he has a couple of hours left in a shift. What the hell do I do with my time? There was a stack of x-rays sitting on top of a file cabinet. Should have been filed 3-4 days ago. Thought to himself, I'm going to have to fire the file clerk in the morning. But he had nothing better to do with his time. So he picked up the x-rays, he started to look at them and test his x-ray reading skills. And he picked up the first one, looked at it. Ulcer. Flipped it over. Yep. Picked up the next one. Hernia. Flipped it over. Yep. Picked up the next one, and he stared at this one for a while. And he came to a conclusion. Cancer of the right femur, the right leg. And he flipped it over. No broken kneecap. Flipped it over again. I'm certain of my diagnosis. This is cancer of the right femur. Flipped it over again. No broken kneecap. Got on the phone. That was Jack Boland. They got on the phone. He called Jack. "Young man, I need you to come down to the hospital right now. Because if you don't, you stand a chance of losing your leg. And even worse, losing your life." Strangely enough, Jack Boland wasn't concerned. Oh, he went to the hospital, he followed the instruction, but he wasn't really concerned. Why? He figured something's going on here. Why weren't those x-rays filed? Why did this doctor have the time to look at my x-ray and be able to diagnose something that the physicians did not? Something's going on here, something bigger than I can imagine, And he went, and yes, he got cobalt treatment, and they saved his leg. But Jack thought this through and said, this is as a 19-year-old, keep in mind. There's a bigger story here. There's a bigger power here taking place. And I want to pursue this. And Jack decided to join the ministry. At 25 years of age, he became the minister of the Unity Church in Detroit, Michigan. And his sermons were on the same topic over and over and over again, and it was called The Secret Power of Serendipity. And Jack came to a remarkable conclusion in his sermons, and his sermons got so big, they had to knock down the church and double the size. They had to knock it down again and quadruple the size, because thousands of people were coming to hear him, because he was inspirational. And Jack's point at his sermons, and he made it over and over and over again, was the Webster definition of serendipity is totally wrong. It says a fortuitous event seemingly by chance. Said Jack. Serendipity is a fortuitous event seemingly by choice. And he went on to prove his case. Died in 1992, way too young. But he left a tremendous legacy of faith and hope for a lot of people who listened to his tapes. I was one of them. Who went to his congregation and believed that serendipity is indeed a matter of choice. Now, as the owner of a broker-dealer, I am surrounded by attorneys. Attorneys to my left, my right. I am surrounded by these damn attorneys constantly every minute of my life. So, a couple of months back, the attorneys want to introduce me to a new attorney.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. So, I spoke to God in the reverent way that I normally do. You sadistic son of a bitch. Why are you bringing yet another attorney into my life? And then I spoke to Paul Lieberman. This guy was humble. He had a sense of humor. My God, I actually liked him. He was also brilliant. Paul Lieberman has been of counsel to Merrill Lynch, New York Stock Exchange, Citigroup. He was and was an attorney for the SEC, also known as Satan's Lair, in the Division of Enforcement. But he's one of the most brilliant attorneys I've ever met in my entire life. Some of you are eventually going to file a Reg D, I promise. Private placement. Some of you may very well go public. Very easily, I can see it. You're going to need what Paul Lieberman brings to this table. One of the smartest, most likable attorneys I've ever met in my life. Paul, get up here.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Steve. I don't know that I'm worthy. But I just want to start off by saying just a couple of things. Steve talked about, killing potential investments. But what he didn't talk about was that really is due diligence. That is the data review that we've talked about. That is key to investment success. And whether you do it as an investor yourself, or whether you have a professional money manager to do it, that's key. And so worrying about killing the investment is really the story of the due diligence of the investment and the story that that investment is telling you and others. And whether you appreciate the story, whether that story has resonance, whether it's serendipitous to you, right? And not by chance, but actually by choice. Okay, I didn't have the serendipitous choice to follow in my family footsteps and go into the medical profession. I wasn't smart enough. I had to end up as a lawyer. So I'm the black sheep of the family. Secondly, I wanted to also mention, the things that ignite the people who try to make investments, the creatives there, basically are reaching out to you as an investor creative to see whether there is a unanimity of that approach towards the investment. So if there's resonance of the investment to them, it's got to be to you, and that's the best way to make that relationship work. So I'll get into that a little bit more. The key to all of that has already been discussed, and that is 3 letters, ROI, the return on your investment. It's the return on your investment of the physical product, regardless of what it is, and it's also the return on the investment to your life. And the medical product that was just discussed is just kind of that type of investment. It's a return, and so is the nick time kind of thing. It's the return on your investment to life. Do you want to participate in an investment that has a life message for you, and also the intergenerational approach to all of investments these days? So that's kind of that. And then on the serendipitous matter of things by choice, some are not by choice, some are by chance. As a young man, I had ulcerative colitis. I couldn't drink. I therefore, in the fraternity, became the designated driver, and the movie Baby Driver is my story. Not really, no. But let's get serious. Why did Steve ask me to come in? I think he thought I could help out. I hope I'm doing it. But I want to talk about, for investment purposes, for investors, there's a couple of things that make a change in 2024 from prior periods of investments. And one are headwinds. And so here are just a couple of little points really regarding what are the headwinds for both investors making the investment and the folks who are trying to get their investment sold. One is the macroeconomics of the environment globally and here in the United States. So you can talk about it all you want, but it's there, it faces you. I'm not going to deal with that. Second, and most importantly, kind of my world that I live in and day out, unfortunately, is the increasing regulatory issues that include data privacy, cybersecurity, and the incidents and events involving cyber. The cost of cybersecurity is now in the multi-billions and is affecting every country, every investment, every financial institution, every hospital, public schools, your own credit cards. It's a gigantic problem. AI, another thing. Partially helping investments, partially a satanic cult. I don't know which is which. So the deal space has changed, and appropriately. It's an evolving thing. It's like, in a way, it's like a cancer cell. It's always moving around, trying to spread. Sometimes it has an antiseptic, it gets killed, et cetera. So there are trends in M&A deals. Let me just talk about a couple of those deals today. And I think Steve heightened it too when he was talking about his looking at an investment, doing the due diligence. Does it make sense? What is he really looking at? Is there profitability somewhere in the investment for the investor? Does that make economic sense? So the difference now in the deal world is moved from value creation and this search for increasing multiples of the investment to now a more realistic approach, looking at the investment from the prism of profitability. Not a multiple that's, 10, 12 times, not going to happen anymore in today's world. So just that. So I think that's a good way of kind of introducing what I want to talk about, and that is more about, regulatory kind of world that investors are in and they need to be focused on. So let's get into it. Let's see if I can move this easily by myself. And of course I can't, I'll use my finger. So is my bio, wonderful me. more about wonderful me, a lot of stuff. I did stuff. I had a lot of stuff. A lot of people helped me with stuff. I got promoted. I did good. Um, um, and so that's another thing that's serendipitous. So by chance and by choice, I happened to, get promoted because of certain things that I did, because I was put in the place to be able to do something with other people that were also serendipitously put in places that we could work together, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all about that. And so serendipity should be your investment goals as well. So just an introduction, what is now going on in the investment world? What's a security? A lot of words. New definition of security is because primarily of digital securities, cyber, um, crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, litigation relating to those types of securities have now changed the definition from the old Howey test from decades ago. So that's expanded, so it makes a new world for investors. Where this world currently is with respect to these investments is litigation, because the investments haven't given results and have proved very unsatisfactory for an investment purpose. And also towards the life story of your investments and your relationship rather with your investment advisor is intergenerational transfer of wealth being increasingly important. And so your investment, your serendipitous approach to your investment should be, is this going to work for my family? So one of the things that connect to me and is resonant as an investor are things like environmental, DEI kind of investments. Is the company that I'm investing in have that moxie, the guts of doing things right, so it's going to be profitable, going to last, so that's an investment that I can leave to my children and their generation and make it worthwhile, whether it's for college education, tuition, regardless of lifestyle. So that's that. So here's the kind of questions that I would normally go through with an investor, whether or not, usually high net worth. I assume most of Steve's clients are high net worth accredited investors looking to make investment opportunities beyond the normal stuff, and alts, by the way, alternative investments, becoming a more increasing part of an investment portfolio. Recent article about Morgan Stanley, about 25% of their current investments are now in alts. And so it's very careful to do your due diligence in alts. So here's a couple of questions. Does the entity have policies and procedures about cybersecurity? How current are they? And is there an incident response plan? Why is that important? Because the regulatory world has now moved to catch up to cyber problems, to require disclosures and a policy and procedures and risk assessments, risk management techniques, and critical high human resources that are qualified to deal with these kinds of events as best they can. So I just say, look, client, whether it's my client or Steve's client, what are your cybersecurity policies and procedures? Do you have a risk management dashboard? What is it? All these basic incidents that require basic, what's the goal? Profitability. Will this investment advisor, will this broker dealer, will this investment get me to profitability for the long term? And if you're not there for the long term, is it a short-term investment I can get out of? Is there liquidity? And what is the cost of that liquidity vis-a-vis risk, right? Let's see. So why do these things matter to investments? Because the real world implication now under the new SEC rules involving both cybersecurities and disclosures, and a more consumer-oriented orientation for transparency of investments by investment advisors and broker dealers and funds to disclosures about what's going on in the investment. Fees, conflicts of interest, other things like side pockets to certain investments, preferential treatment of certain investments versus others, that competition amongst an investor. So all of that has now come under scrutiny, and new rules and regulations going on about that. and then also, the emergence of new products and services all over the place and all over the time. Let's see. So here's some things that, high net worth investors, should know. They should ask a question. Why should I, as a high net worth individual, make an investment in a private placement? How are regulatory developments and the responsiveness of your investment advisor to those regulatory developments going to impact me and my investment and my family wealth? So why should you care? Cyber affects 98% of organizations, just focusing on one type of risk, just cyber risk, which involved data privacy risk together. Let's just put it in the framework of that. 98% of organizations, only a third have experienced cyber events and securities, but it doesn't discriminate. It's going all over the place. And when it gets into your public schools, we have a problem, and it has. So the basic concept for all of what the regulators are trying to do, whether it's federal, state, and local, are regulations involving a framework. And that's the common phrase that's used. What's the framework? The framework is the chassis. It's the foundation of the house. It's the underpinnings to be able to put a superstructure on top of that and keep building blocks to deal with the risks. And so our federal government, CISA, has created the basic framework. It's kind of global, and it's going all over the place, and they keep adding new things to the framework. So all the more reason to ask your investment advisor, your broker-dealer, your fund manager, what is your cybersecurity data privacy framework? And if they don't have it, if they don't know what you're talking about, you're in the wrong place. In my opinion, look, so I wanted everyone to just say, look, let's make sure that we're looking at cybersecurity because solutions exist. They're not solvable 100%. There's a lot of risk there, but they're doing the best they can because you, as an investor, want to be compliant and assure that your investment advisor, broker-dealer, manager is also compliant and resilient. So you can have a breach, you can have a problem. Is there policies, procedures, are there human resources, there's chief technology officer, their risk management, do they have a risk management committee? Is it real? Does it do something? Do they have some experience and knowledge about cyber and data privacy regulations? Are they working with qualified law firms to do the best that they can? Are they responsive when they have a risk incident? And why is that important? Because that's where all of these new rules have now gone to require both issuers, public companies, and investment advisors, broker-dealers, hedge fund managers to have risk management. They have risk management in other dimensions, not just cybersecurity, right? They should have it, so they just need to add to their framework and just add a piece regarding data privacy and cybersecurity. Have they done a gap assessment? And these are like the real key, blocking and tackling that's required by, yourself as an investor and the entity that you're doing your investment with. A gap analysis. I do a gap analysis every day. What did I do yesterday? What's on my plate for today? How am I going to get to tomorrow? That's a gap analysis. And the gap is between the entities, your investment, current state, the rules and regulations that have evolved and changed. Are they capable of getting to that future state of resiliency, duration, and results? And if they're not, and if you don't think they are, then it's time to switch, right? So you want to be there. So new regulation, SK, are disclosure requirements. They're basically asking the company, whether it's a public company, a private company, investment advisors, are you focused on these risks? Are you doing what's necessary for investors' understanding of your own risk governance? So it's basically transparency. So a lot of the details here about what's going on, regulation SK talks about ITRIM, a nice moniker. So it's IT Risk Identification and Management Framework and a process. So there's the framework again. So you're supposed to have it. There are qualified experts in the world. They are evolving. It's a whole new thing. They're available. Ask your folks, do you have this committee? Are you doing any of this? And who are you using? One of the things that this use of consultants have also caused is the change by cyber criminal to say, wait a minute, we're having entry problems into the company's, details and data by viral introspection, right? So let's go to their vendors, see who they're working with, and route in through the vendor, pretend they're an investor as an imposter, and get into the public company that way. It happens all the time. So public companies now, and even investment advisors, broker-dealers, when they're using a vendor, they have to do let's look at them and see whether they are killable, right? Do their due diligence, same thing on the vendors, and that's what's happening. So Form 8K deals with material disclosures by most public companies. If you have investments that are New York Stock Exchange or listed securities, you should be looking at their 8K, 10K filings. Ask your advisor to determine whether they have done that and what are they saying about cyber incidents and events. In the past, it had been, a dirty little secret. Don't say anything about it. We're investigating. We don't have to make a disclosure. And then the next thing you know, 2 years later, out comes something, and it's a $4 billion mistake involving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people's credit information, et cetera. So all of this now is coming forward, requiring, yes, additional costs, budget expenses for the company, for the investment advisor. Another question, Mr. Investment Advisor, before I open my account with you, what is your budget for cybersecurity, risk management? Who's on your board? Blah, blah, blah. Let me see your financials. What are you analyzing? Are you doing Steve's, kill due diligence approach before you're making an investment that you're going to recommend to me? And then do your own. Because more and more and more of this stuff is now going to be transparent for you as the investor. More new rules. There are serious rules now going on, and it's both SEC on a federal level, other agents, Department of Justice, CISA, and all those that are involved with that, FCC, states all over every state in the union, global, EU, even the Malaysian companies, China, all getting involved now. And the SEC objective is really it's not a satanic place. Corporate disclosure to the public, about these events, giving the public, the investor, a need to know what's going on. So just a quick summary of some of the rules. They have to have a security and risk management and incident notification process. And if your company that you're dealing with is mumbling something that's incoherent to you when you ask the question, hang up the phone and move on, right? I take no prisoners kind of approach to things, right? Serendipitously. They have to amend Regulation SP, which is commonly known as the privacy policy. Ask for your investment company's privacy policy statement. How recent is it? It's like the terms of service that's on their website. It should be visible. Have they established any new cyber risk management program, techniques, personnel to do all that stuff? Because incident disclosure now is, much more effective because it's quickly done. So the rules are now somewhere between 48 hours of the incident, some, extended out to like 72 hours. The company responds to the SEC's request. Oh, wait a minute, we have to perform an investigation. We don't really know what the story is. It's going to take us a while to do that. And the answer was no, do your investigation. You should be able to determine the materiality of that event and do a risk assessment, a gap analysis, and a dollars and cents damage analysis in a quick way. You can always amend the disclosure. So that's helpful to you as the investor. The specifics are here. The new investment advisors, such as Steve, have to now do, potentially on the effective date, an ADVC, just like the other ADV advisor disclosure documents. a mandatory disclosure of events now is going on what's the ADV Part 2A. That's usually the disclosure that all investors get along with the Part 1. And it basically is a disclosure document as to whether or not there have been events and the materiality and the seriousness of it. And the same thing would be true in a registration statement if you're buying a publicly offered investment. Same thing, a registration statement is going to have those kind of disclosures, and those really should be really looked at very hard. I think that's enough about that. Then additional record-keeping requirements, because the regulator approach to things, if it's not written, it didn't happen. So everybody, broker-dealers, investment advisors, hedge fund managers, all have to document what's going on and do it in an effective way. That's why they have compliance officers. That's why they have chief technology officers. That's why they have a risk management committee. All that needs to be documented and written policies and procedures. So that's kind of that. More about Reg SP. It's kind of, you can go on for days on that. So I guess one of them is, the key point number 8 there is, there's a focus on the vulnerability of the analysis of the vulnerability, let me put it that way. So that's critical really for the financial services sector, which I think they appreciate. Why is that important? Because these things are profitability killers. It involves the own financial condition of your investment manager. If they are subject to gigantic fines, penalties, potential cease and desist orders, plus the reputational damages, can you get your money out of that place? That's the question. So you don't want to be there when the stuff starts falling apart. So the security of the firm, as well as the proficiency of your investment, are two things to keep in lockstep, and that's not serendipitous. That's required. Private fund advisors are now subject to the same type of rules, both federal and state. New York has taken a very serious approach to it. They're addressing cybersecurity regulation. Similar kind of thing. There's a basic framework. People are adding to the framework in different ways, but it involves disclosure, risk analysis, policies and procedures, what they call WSPs, and then enforcement activities to basically ensure that the bookkeeping and record requirements, the rules and regs are being followed. Most recently, New York closed down Genesis basically for about an $8 million violation. If you have Celsius, I have a couple of clients that have bought Celsius, they're in a world of hurt with respect to the profitability, lack thereof, of that investment, and that happened almost overnight. And that's how quick the crypto world can move. So the 5 principal components, of the rule, you'll get it when you ask for it. And one, D is important there, borrowing from a private fund. So if you as an investor need to know whether the money manager can borrow from the fund, right? And just like certain government officials and former government officials, they are borrowing from a fund to pay for their own problems, right? That is not a potentially good thing for you as the investor to that fund. And then private fund rules here now. I think I mentioned it before. Preferential treatment, out the door, no more side pockets. Certain people, because of the size of their investments or nepotism or serendipity, are placed in a preferential, side pocket, not disclosed, other than, the side. We have the ability to do a side pocket, but who gets into the side pocket? A whole, other story. Look for Saint Nick on that one. And out the door. Why? Because it was inappropriate. It wasn't beneficial, and if you were not within a side pocket, you got the worst investment result, right? You didn't get out early. Why is that so horrible? Not at all. And that's me as the former regulator kind of guy. And then, sometimes preferential offers are made and take advance of periodic information that's not available to other investors. So a differential in what's being disclosed, and that's not right. And then, most importantly, ask whether your investment advisor, broker-dealer, or fund manager has done its own cybersecurity and data privacy audit, or what they call tabletop exercise. Hire a consultant, besides your own auditor and CPA, to come in and perform an actual examination, a physical, right? Just like Steve talked about whether or not, that was a kneecap or cancer. Same kind of scenario here. Test yourself, get the medical exam on how good your processes for cyber data, risk management, and everything else is going. And if they haven't done it, that means they're not in the gap analysis, they're behind the curve, not the place you want to be as an investor, in my opinion, as a lawyer. Some conclusions. What's the takeaways? A lot of enforcement activities are coming down the pike. Crypto world is going to be changing. Losses to broker-dealers, RIAs, and funds are going to be increasing when the stuff hits the fan, and that's not serendipitous, that's by choice, because they didn't do the work. And if you're not blocking and tackling, you cannot win. And if the firm that you're with is not blocking and tackling for you and with you and letting you in on the plays and letting you run a play, letting you decide, hey, wait a minute, I want to do this, and do the kill analysis with you or for you on that analysis to help you, then maybe you're in the wrong place. Reputational impacts, I think I talked about that. There are some cybersecurity insurance policies that are being provided. They're never to a make whole scenario. You can't get it all back. It's very, very high, and the premium market's going all over the place. It's not a panacea. Questions? I hope I've helped give you kind of a perspective from what the lawyers deal with, kind of help investors. I'm personally an investor myself, so I would want to ask and do these questions just like every other investor. Thank you. Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah, in a couple of ways. Yep. Yep. Yes. Correct. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Right. Right. Correct. Correct. Yep. 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 Well, two things. Let me answer the second question first. When there is a cybersecurity attack, an incident, an event, you can call them what you will, what the cyber criminal is looking for, and they're like syndicates now of actual cyber criminals. There's a guy at the top, and he hires other people to, here's the software tools, here's the viral and stuff, go at it, have a nice day. I get a fee for doing it, just like a portfolio manager. It's crazy. But what they did with respect to public schools is to get into personal information about the child and the child's parents. Simple hacks, social security numbers, credit card information, what do they call it, parent-teacher kind of things where the information is being provided, and information about the child just for purposes of a ransomware attack, whether it's individually against you or in the entire community. I don't think we've seen entire community-type ransomware attacks, but certainly college educations and their endowment policies, because of the size of them and the dimension of them, besides public companies, treasuries, are being hacked and attacked, and ransomware attacks. And a few years ago, the subject of ransomware attacks was basically, verboten. You didn't talk about it, you kept it quiet, you paid the ransom even though you were told not to do that, you didn't report it until, long after, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the fact of all education, our infrastructure, our investment advisors, our investment world are all basic targets for these cyber criminals. And that's why the protection is necessary. I think I've answered both questions. I hope I did. Right. I think this, I think there's one reason, because the cyber criminals had all been sitting in front of their screens for years, because that's all they do. They don't go outside. They don't go, talk to other people. They're, playing, I don't want to, they're not gamers necessarily, but their game is, let's see what I can hack, and as a game go into certain things. And the next thing you know, they're trying to, ransomware, the next door neighbor. But now it is an international, cartel, thing, and Iran, Russia, certain other countries, Iran, I said Iran, are uniquely focused on doing that. Now that's for the targets. Anybody? Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Is serendipity chance, or it's a choice?
Yeah, just throw it on the floor.
What do you think? The greatest philosopher of the 20th century liked to say, you can observe a lot just by watching. He also happened to be the greatest catcher in the history of Major League Baseball. His name was Yogi Berra. Same man who brought us that wonderful saying, always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't come to yours. Is it choice or is it chance? When my son was very little, now 30, but when he was very little, he used to love stage plays. I don't know why, but he loved them. And I took him to everyone he loved. And one day a play called South Pacific, Rodgers and Hammerstein, came to Broadway. And he fell in love with this play. I want to paraphrase Yogi just a bit. You can't observe a lot just by watching. You can also hear a lot just by listening. I want you to imagine this. He was so in love with the play South Pacific, I took him 9 times to see the same play. It was over a fairly long period. 9 times I saw the same play. Do you know what it's like to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning singing Cockeyed Optimist to yourself every night of your entire life? But that's exactly what it was like. I knew every word to every song in that musical by heart. I could recite it at any point in time. There was one song I heard, and I heard, and I heard, but I never listened. And about the 9th time I took him to see that play, that song popped up. I knew all the words by heart. And then for the very first time in my life, I listened. The song was called Happy Talk. That's a simple enough song. Happy talking, talking, happy talk. Talk about things you like to do. And then I listened. For the first time in my life, I heard the words that explained to me why a George Bolt, why an Andrea Bocelli, why a Jack Boland, why they were driven by the very same choices in life. Because the words to this play and this song continue. You've got to have a dream. If you don't have a dream, how are you going to have a dream come true? Amen. I will see you all in June.